Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel where we bring the most iconic action stories to life. Today we are diving into a true Filipino classic Tataking Alipin Fernando Poe Jr., Leonor Vergara, and Lanio Tiza in Pepin Kalawit, 1958. With hate locked deep in his heart and fear in his holster, he walked on to keep a rendezvous with danger and death. Starring the legendary Fernando Poe Jr. Sit tight as we walk you through this gripping, emotional, and action-packed tale of loyalty, revenge, and justice. Armando Herrera Leal, born May 25, 1955, is a retired male triple jumper from Cuba who represented his native country twice at the Summer Olympics, 1976 and 1980. His best Olympic result was finishing in 11th place in Moscow, USSR, 1980, with a leap of 16.03 meters. He was also the silver medalist in the event at the 1974 Central American and Caribbean Games. In 1983, Herrera retired from athletics. His younger brother, Alejandro Herrera, was also a triple jumper. His personal bests in the event is 16.85 meters set in 1980. Fernando Poe Jr., born Ronald Allen Kelly Poe, August 20, 1939 to December 14, 2004, was a Filipino actor, director, and screenwriter. Nickname, The King, and often referred to by his initials FPJ, he has been described as a cultural icon, having dominated the Philippine box office from the 1960s to 1990s through his leading roles in action films. For his career that spanned nearly 5 decades, he has received numerous honors including the Order of National Artists of the Philippines in 2006 and the CCP Centennial Honors for the Arts in 1999, 2, 3. Poe appeared in around 300 films from 1955 to 2003, and 1. Poe entered the film industry as a stuntman following the death of his father, actor Fernando Poe Sr., and made his film debut in 1955 with Hanap and I Palaris, a sequel to a film that starred his father. His breakout came in the 1956 film Low Waist Gang and went on to star in action films that portrayed him as the champion and defender of the poor and oppressed. 6. His notable films include Only the Brave Know How, 1965, Lino Brocas Santiago. 1970, Salsoan. Castillos Asadillo, 1971, Bato sa Buhangin, 1976, Jurigen Si Totoi Bato, 1979, Eddie Romero's Aguila, 1980, his self-directed On Ponde, 1980, and its sequels, Roman Rapido and Asang Bala Kaline. Both 1983, the 1986 films Ayo ang Tanda, Kanya ang Cavite, Muslim.357, and Bat ang Quiapo, Kate Konting Pagdingan, 1990, Ang Provinciano, 1996, Isasambang Kita sa Tati Ko, 1999, and On Dalapesa, 2000. 7. Poe's accolades include 5 FAMAS Awards for Best Actor, and 2, a joint record, and 3, that inducted him into the FAMAS Hall of Fame in 1988. He also won Best Director for his films On Padrino, 1984, and Kate Butas in Carryam, Papasukan Ko, 1995. 8. In 2004, FAMAS posthumously granted him the Natatanging Alagating Shining Award. Poe was also posthumously declared a National Artist of the Philippines in 2006, accepted by his family in 2012. 9. Poe ran for President of the Philippines in the 2004 election. He lost to the incumbent Gloria Macapagal Arroyo by just over 1 million votes, 3.48%, the closest margin by percentage between the winner and runner-up in the history of Philippine presidential elections. 7 months after the election, Poe died of a stroke, Hundreds of thousands attended his wake and funeral. 10, 11. Poe was married to actress Susan Rosas, who played his on-screen love interest in 17 films. 3. He is the father of Senator Grace Poe and actress Lovie Poe. Early life and education. Ronald Allen Kelly Poe was the son of Filipino actor and director Fernando Poe Sr., born Alan Fernando Poe y Reyes, 1916–1951, from San Carlos, Pangasinan, and Elizabeth Bessie Kelly, 1918–1999. He was born in Manila on August 20, 1939. He was known as Ronnie to his family. His parents, at the time of his birth, were not legally married until 1940. In 2004, Poe's political opponents tried to derail his bid for the 2004 Philippine presidency when they sought to disqualify him as an illegitimate son of a non-Filipino mother. He was the second among 6 siblings, including Andy, born Fernando Kelly Poe Jr., 1943–1995, 12, whose given name was used by Poe as his own professional name to bank on the popularity of his father, who was a top actor in his time. Conrad Poe was Poe's half-brother, the illegitimate son of Fernando Poe Sr. and actress Patricia Maharas. The original spelling of the family surname was Poe, from his paternal grandfather, playwright Lorenzo Poe, a Catalan migrant from Mallorca, Spain, who ventured into mining and business in the Philippines. In 1953, Poe finished his primary education at San Beda College. For high school, he attended San Sebastian College. He continued his education at Mapua Institute of Technology and University of the East and took the course Theater Arts. When his father died from rabies at age 34, Poe became the family's breadwinner. In order to support his family, he dropped out of the University of the East during his sophomore year. 13. Film career. Poe dropped out of college to work in the Philippine film industry as a messenger boy, and was given acting roles in subsequent years. 14. Starting as a stuntman for Everlasting Pictures, he was given a starring role in the film Anak and I Palaris, Son of Palaris, at the age of 14. The film, however, was not a big hit. In 1956, the film Low Waist Dang made him popular. 14, and the film was such a hit that low-waist pants became a fad. Also known as FPJ from his initials, Poe acted in a number of films which depicted him as the champion of the poor and downtrodden. He also directed films under the pseudonyms Dlanner and Romualdo Reyes. Reyes originated from the surname of his paternal grandmother, Martha. He established FPJ Productions in 1961 and later organized other film companies. In 1963, he testified against criminal gangs, known as the Big Four, who extorted money from the film industry. In 1965, he shared the lead in The Ravagers. In the Philippines, this is titled Only the Brave Know How, a film depicting the United States and the Philippines working together against Japanese wartime occupation. The film is considered one of the most influential Filipino films. Poe won the most Best Actor awards at the FAMAS, citation needed. Among the films that received awards were Nga Alabak sa Lupa, 1967, Asadillo, 1971, Darujan si Totoy Bato, 1979, Pisahanemo, Tatapusan Ko, 1983, and Muslim.357, 1986. Poe was one of the highest-paid film actors in the Philippines in the 1980s, alongside Dolphy and Vilma Santos, with his salary reaching over 1 million pesos per film. 15. In 1988, Poe partnered with San Miguel Corporation in a near 27 million Cuban pesos promotional deal for San Miguel beer. 16. His first endorsement of a product in his entire film career. with the first television commercial airing on January 2017. In mid-1993, Poe was then set to star in a film produced by Viva Films and directed by Pablo Santiago titled Talaking Bibig, Kabiging Dibdib, with Alice Dixon cast as the female lead, though it did not come to fruition. 18. Among his roles were Flavio in the Ang Panday fantasy series, Kay Konting Paktingin, Dito Sa Pidong Gatang and Nagila. His last film, Partners, also stars nine-ball billiards champion Efren Bata Reyes. Political career. 2004 presidential bid. Main article, Fernando Poe Jr. 2004 presidential campaign. Fernando Poe Jr. was the Coalición ng Nagkakaisang Pilipino, KNP's candidate for the 2004 presidential election. He accepted nomination in December 2003 and was to be the opposition candidate in the Philippines' 2004 presidential election. 19. Personal life. Poe married actress Susan Rosas, the professional name of Jesusa Sonora, in a civil wedding in December 1968. They later married in a religious service, and among their primary sponsors were then President Ferdinand Marcos and First Lady Imelda. Poe and Rosas adopted a daughter, Grace Poe, who became a senator. Poe was very reclusive about his personal life. However, in February 2004, during the presidential campaign, Poe admitted to having fathered two children out of wedlock. 20. He had an affair with actress Anna Marin and had one son, Ronian, and with former actress Rowena Moran and had a daughter, Lord Virginia. Poe was admitted to St. Luke's Medical Center in Quezon City in the evening of December 11, 2004, after complaining of dizziness at a gathering in his production studio during a Christmas party. 22. He suffered from a stroke and slipped into a coma while being treated for a brain clot. Doctors described his condition as a cerebral thrombosis with multiple organ failure. 23. He died at the age of 65 on December 14 at 12:01 a.m. Philippine time, UTC +8 o'clock, without regaining consciousness. 23. His remains were initially transferred to the Arlington East Memorial Chapels in Pasig, now known as the Evergreen Memorial Chapels, before being transferred a day later to the Santo Domingo Church in Quezon City. 24. 25. Organizers of the 9-day wake claimed numbers as high as 2 million. 26. The funeral procession drew tens of thousands who crowded the streets of Quezon City, an event which drew comparisons to the funeral processions of former Senator Ninoy Aquino in August 1983, who also had his wake held at the Santo Domingo Church, and of actress Julie Veda in May 1985. He was buried in his family plot along with his parents in the Manila North Cemetery. On December 14, 2012, 8 years after his death, a monument to Poe was erected at the corner of Roxas Boulevard and Arquiza Street in Ermita, Manila, with widow Susan Rosas and daughter Grace Poe attending the unveiling. 27. On January 13, 2022, President Rodrigo Duterte signed Republic Act No. 11608, renaming Roosevelt Avenue in Quezon City as Fernando Poe Jr. Avenue. According to the Canadian Journal of Communication, academic literature has described all of the following as cultural icons: Shakespeare, Oprah, Batman, and of Green Gables, the cowboy, the 1960s female pop singer, the horse, Las Vegas, the library, the Barbie doll, DNA, and the New York Yankees. 4. A web-based survey was set up in 2006 allowing the public to nominate their ideas for national icons of England. 5. And the results show the range of different types of icons associated with an English view of English culture. One example is the red AEC Routemaster London double-decker bus, 6, 7, 8. Matryoshka dolls are seen internationally as cultural icons of Russia. 9. In the former Soviet Union, the hammer and sickle symbol and statues of Vladimir Lenin instead represented the country's most prominent cultural icons. The values, norms, and ideals represented by a cultural icon vary among people who subscribe to it and more widely among others who may interpret cultural icons as symbolizing quite different values. Thus, an apple pie is a cultural icon of the United States, but its significance varies among Americans. National icons can become targets for those opposing or criticizing a regime, for example, crowds destroying statues of Lenin in Eastern Europe after the fall of communism. 10. Or burning the American flag to protest U.S. actions abroad. 11. Religious icons can also become cultural icons in societies where religion and culture are deeply entwined, such as representations of the Madonna in societies with a strong Catholic tradition. The order of the highest state honor is conferred on individuals deemed as having done much for their artistic field. Deserving individuals must have been recommended by both the Cultural Center and the National Commission for Culture and the Arts prior to receiving the award. Such people are then titled, by virtue of a presidential proclamation, as National Artist, Filipino, Gawad Pembansang Alagating Shining, and are inducted into the order. Due to the non-retroactive nature of Proclamation No. 1001, artists who have died before 1972 are currently unable to be honored in the National Artist Roll. First Lieutenant Jamal Razal, a Muslim police officer based in Mindanao, is summoned to Manila by his superior, Colonel Castro, to penetrate a massive criminal syndicate. He settles into an apartment located in a rough neighborhood controlled by the syndicate, but hides his identity from the community, aided by friendly police officers who falsely accuse him of being a wanted murderer. However, his landlord Des develops a relationship with Jamal after reading his copy of the Quran and witnessing him beat up syndicate members who routinely extort her and her neighbors. Jamal undertakes a stakeout of syndicate henchmen led by Frankie, but is injured after getting into a shootout with Frankie's men. He escapes with the help of two boys, Kikoy and Bunoy, who hide him in their cot. With the help of Des, Frankie recovers at the house of the boy's guardian, Imo, and becomes friends with everyone in the household. However, Jamal's identity is discovered after he wipes out a gang posing as soldiers during a raid on Des' apartment. As the apartment is declared a crime scene, another police officer, Captain Rios, discreetly kills a wounded gang member, revealing himself to be the syndicate's protector. With his cover blown, Jamal is ordered to return home by Colonel Castro. As he leaves Manila, Jamal survives an ambush by Frankie's men, but is devastated after seeing Kikoy and Bunoy killed in the crossfire. He visits their graves and vows revenge as he is comforted by Des. Jamal then goes rogue and embarks on a killing spree of the syndicate's goons before capturing Frankie and forcing him to reveal the syndicate's headquarters. Alarmed at the deaths of his men, the syndicate's leader Jimmy panics and harangues Rios, who kills him and takes over the syndicate. Arriving at the syndicate headquarters, Jamal discovers Rios leading the group, but Frankie escapes and alerts Rios to Jamal's presence, leading to a shootout that leads to Jamal killing multiple syndicate members and corrupt policemen working for Rios as well as Frankie, who dies after a grenade he is holding is shot and prematurely detonated by Jamal. Rios tries to escape, but is injured after his car is blown up and disabled after being shot at by Jamal. Jamal catches him in an alley and offers him a chance to shoot back, but Rios launches an Islamophobic rant, prompting Jamal to shoot him as he tries to reach for his gun. The film ends with Jamal praying at a mosque. Main article, Muslim Magnum .357, to serve and protect. The film was remade in 2014 under the title Muslim Magnum .357, to serve and protect with Ejercito in the title role and Francis June Posadas as the director. 6. The remake was an official entry into the 2014 Metro Manila Film Festival and was dedicated to the memory of Fernando Poe Jr., which coincides with Poe's 10th death anniversary. In the Journal of Film and Video, Leonard Soberson stated that the action film genre has been a subject of scholarly debate since the 1980s. 4. Soberson wrote that repeated traits of the genre include chase sequences, fights, shootouts, explosions, and stunt work, while other scholars asserted there were more underlying traits that define the genre. 4. David Borwell in The Way Hollywood Tells It wrote that audiences are told that spectacle overrides narrative in action cinema, while Willa Winston Dixon echoed that these films were typified by excessive spectacle as a desperate attempt to mask the lack of content. 3. 5. Jeff King argued that the spectacle can also be a vehicle for narrative, opposed to interfering with it. 6. Soberson stated that Harvey O'Brien had perhaps the most convincing understanding of the genre, stating that the action film was best understood as a fusion of form and content. It represents the idea and ethic of action through a form in which action, agitation, and movement are paramount. 4. O'Brien wrote further in his book Action Movies, The Cinema of Striking Back, to suggest action films being unique and not just a series of action sequences, stating that that was the difference between Raiders of the Lost Ark, 1981, and Die Hard, 1988, that while both were mainstream Hollywood blockbusters with a hero asserting masculinity and overcoming obstacles to a personal and social solution, John McClane in Die Hard repeatedly firing his automatic pistol while swinging from a high rise was not congruent with the image of Indiana Jones in Raiders swinging his whip to fend off villains in the backstreets of Cairo. 7. British author and academic Yvonne Tasker expanded on this topic, stating that action films have no clear and constant iconography or settings. In her book The Hollywood Action and Adventure Film, 2015, she found that the most broadly consistent themes tend to be a character's quest from freedom from oppression, such as a hero overcoming enemies or obstacles, and physical conflicts or challenge, usually battling other humans or alien opponents. Bait. By late 2010 studies of genre analysis, the term genre itself is often replaced or supplemented with the words mode and narrative form, with all three terms often being used interchangeably. 9. Johan Hoagland and Agnieszka Soltysik-Monas said that the difference between these concepts are elusive, but stated that genre could be defined as belonging to specific historical and cultural moments, while mode and form can refer to a larger pattern that operates across a wider historical and cultural field. 9. In their book Action Cinema Since 2000, 2024, Tasker, Lisa Peirce, and Chris Holmland stated that thinking of action as a mode is more helpful than thinking of it as a genre. 10. The three authors suggested that action frames a certain manner of filmmaking and viewing exceed genre without eclipsing it, stating that websites such as IMDb and Wikipedia rarely label films by a single genre, and that streaming services such as Amazon Prime and Netflix similarly dilutes what is marketed and received as action. 10. In transnational cinema, there are two major trends in action films: Hollywood action films and their style being imitated around the globe, and the other being Chinese-language martial arts films. 11. The roots of action films extend into the beginning of film, but it was only in the mid-20th century when action films developed into their own recognizable genre instead of being a collection of other types of films such as westerns, swashbucklers, or adventure films. 1. Films have been described action films, or action-adventure film, as early as the 1910s. 4, 12. Only by the 1980s was the term action as its own unique genre used routinely in terms of promotion and reviewing practices. 1. Hong Kong action films. Main article, Hong Kong action cinema. The first Chinese-language martial arts films can be traced to Shanghai cinema of the late 1920s. These films were popular during the period, which comprised almost 60% of the total Chinese films. Manfeng Yip stated that these films were rather tame by contemporary standards. 13. He wrote that they lacked the kind of dazzling action choreography as expected today and had crude and rudimentary special effects. 13. These films came under increasing attack by both government officials and cultural elites for their allegedly superstitious and anarchistic tendencies, leading them to be banned in 1932. It was not until the base of Chinese commercial filmmaking was relocated from Shanghai to Hong Kong in the late 1940s that martial arts cinema was revived. These films contained much of the characteristics of the previous era. During this period, over 100 films were based on the adventures of real-life Cantonese folk hero Wang Feiheng, who first appeared in film in 1949. These films primarily circuited within Hong Kong and Cantonese-speaking areas with Chinese diaspora. 14. Yip continued that these Hong Kong films were still lagging behind in aesthetic and technical standards that films from the United States, Europe, and Japan had during this period. 15. Yip described Japanese cinema as the most advanced in Asia at the time. This was showcased by the international breakthrough of Akira Kurosawa's films like Rashomon, 1950. 15. The film genre known as the chambro was at its height in Japan. The style was a subgenre to the jidegeki, or period drama with an emphasis on sword fighting and action. 16. It had a similar level of popularity to that of the Western in the United States. The most internationally known films of this era were the films Kurosawa with Seven Samurai, 1954, The Hidden Fortress, 1958, and Yojimbo, 1961. 17. By at least the 1950s, Japanese films were looked upon as a model to be emulated by Hong Kong film production, and Hong Kong film companies began actively enlisting professionals from Japan, such as cinematographer Tadashi Nishimoto, to contribute to color and widescreen cinematography. 15. New literary sources also developed in martial arts. Films of this period, with the Xinpai wuxia xiaoxuo, or New School martial arts fiction, coming into prominence with the success of Yan Yushin's Longhu Do Jinhuo, 1954, and Jin Yang Shujian and Chulu, 1956, which showed influence of the Shanghai martial arts films but also circulated from Hong Kong to Taiwan and Chinese communities overseas. This led to a growing demand in both local and regional markets in the early 1960s and saw a surge in production of Hong Kong martial arts films that went beyond the stories about Wang Feiheng, which were declining in popularity. 18. These new martial arts films featured magical swordplay and higher production values and more sophisticated special effects than the previous films with Shaw Brothers, a campaign of New School Xinpai martial arts swordplay films such as Su San Hong's Temple of the Red Lotus, 1965, and King Who's Come Drink With Me, 1966. 19. The popularity of Bruce Lee attracted a global audience for kung fu films. However, his career was cut short following his untimely death in 1973, which led to a decline in popularity for the art form. 20. In the 1970s, the Hong Kong martial arts films began to grow under the format of Yangang, staunch masculinity, mostly through the films of Chan Che, which were popular. This transition led to the kung fu film subgenre at beginning of the decade and moved beyond the swordplay films with contemporary settings of late Qing or early Republican periods and had more hand-to-hand combat over supernatural swordplay and special effects. 21. A new studio, Golden Harvest, quickly became one of independent filmmakers to grant creative freedom and pay and attracted new directors and actors, including Bruce Lee. 22. The popularity of kung fu films and Bruce Lee led to attract a global audience of these films in the United States and Europe, but was cut short on Lee's death in 1973, leading the phase's popularity to decline. 20. Following a period of stagnation, Chan Che and Lau Kar-leung revitalized the genre with Shaolin Kung Fu films and Chor Yuan series of Docker swordplay films based on the novels of Gu Long. 20. Kung fu comedies appeared featuring Jackie Chan as martial arts films flourished into the 1980s. Other films again modernized the form with gangster films of John Woo, A Better Tomorrow, 1986, The Killer, 1989, and the Wong Fei-hung saga returning in Sui Hark's Once Upon a Time in China featuring Jet Li, which again revitalized the swordplay-style films. 20. By the turn of the century, Hollywood action films would look towards Hong Kong cinema and bringing some of their major actors and directors over to apply their style to their films, such as Chan, Wu, Lee, Michelle Yeoh, and Yuan Wu. Ping. 23. The release of Ang Lee's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, 2000, led to a global release status of Chinese-language martial arts films, most notably Zhang Yimou's Hero, 2002, and House of Flying Daggers, 2004, Stephen Chow's Kung Fu Hustle, 2004, and Shin Kaiga's The Promise, 2005. 24. Most Hong Kong action films in the first quarter of the 21st century, such as those in Cold War, 2012, Cold War II, 2016, and the White Storm film series, have their violence toned down, especially compared to the earlier work of directors like Wu and Johnny Tu. 25. Anton Chin, in his study on the Hong Kong action film, wrote that the influence of China and the amount of Chinese co-productions made with Hong Kong created a shift in these films, particularly following the release of Infernal Affairs, 2002. 26. Hollywood action films. Harvey O'Brien wrote in 2012 that the contemporary action film emerged through other genres, primarily westerns, crime, and war films, and can be separated into four forms: the formative, the classical, the post